it's like, I think the big problem is that what's most attractive for people, for some reason, they seem to go to what will lose weight the fastest. And I think why that's a huge issue is because the quicker that someone loses weight without proper education and habit building behind it, the more increased likelihood of them self-sabotaging, falling back into what was easier and familiar before, and with that comes the weight back on with it, as I experienced multiple times before as well. What's going on, legend? Angus Beef here, and a huge welcome to the Anti-Diet TV channel. Super stoked you're here. So welcome to episode 2 of the Fuck Dieting coaching series. This is a 4-part video series, which is basically breaking down 4 parts over a sick feature that I did in a recent podcast that I was part of. So if you haven't checked out part 1, I'll link the card just here so you can go check it out. And that basically has me, your boy, covering some insights around my origins backstory, around dieting, and around what evolved my anti-diet coaching message. So go and check that out, you'll absolutely love it. In episode 2, which is this one that I've got dropping for you guys here, I'm going to be covering a whole host of cool stuff. Seriously, some pretty cool stuff. Basically the problems that come with cutting out entire macronutrients, why dieting becomes harder the more times that you repeat, basically starting one, not being able to stick to it, stopping it, falling off the wagon, like why it gets harder the more that you repeat cycles like that. Why you do not need to cut out carbs to be able to successfully lose and maintain weight. Why pleasure and enjoyment needs to be part of your approach if you want to have any chance at being able to maintain the weight that you lose. And also the huge difference between if it fits your macros and flexible dieting, alongside a host of other cool stuff. So strap yourself in, hope you get some value from this video, and please, if you have any questions around the fire that I'm dropping in this, obviously in this video, feel free to light up the comments below, and I'll catch you guys on the outro.
What I want to dive into, Angus, is, and you touched on it in your story, and I think it's something that's, as we said, super prevalent right now, is all these diet approaches, these weight loss approaches, get in shape, and they're very, it could be macronutrients. Obviously, there's different times of day in fasting, which is sort of a different category, but it's my idea where it's a rule. But let's talk more about cutting out, certain foods, sort of macronutrients, or even just strict rules, I guess, on it. And for anyone, you guys who are tuning in, I'd love to know in the comments, have you tried a diet where you have to cut out something? Was it cutting out the carbs, fats, processed stuff, or a food group? Let me know in the comments, and we'll be able to give some ideas. But obviously that's pretty prevalent, and you probably know the stats as well as me. The stats of obesity and people's weight it's going in the wrong direction. Like statistically, we're not actually getting leaner societies. There's all these diets out there. They've all got their own rules about don't eat this, but I think it's safe to say it's not working as a whole. Why do you think, Angus, like from your experience, that really is falling short for most people? That doesn't work for them long term.
Well, the funny thing is, man, is like, yeah, those stats are true. Well, it's not funny, I shouldn't say it's funny. It's absolutely ridiculous. But why I mean it's funny is because we live in the information age, and you can learn anything about everything at the touch of your fingertips. You know what I mean? So it's like there's no shortage of information. What there's a lack of is, well, people having an awareness. So that's what I mean. Like you and I, we've gotten to this stage of awareness where it's like we can spot bullshit easy. You know what I mean? But for someone who's overweight and has failed multiple things in the past, that awareness is lost. And what's going on is they're in this place of need / pain / emotional pain, and just obviously take into account their history of how many things they've failed. They've then got this element of skepticism and whatnot, and where nothing makes sense and everything contradicts. And people that are in that place are the easiest to target with the most trending sort of diets, and obviously you see celebs that endorse their shit and whatever. So it's like, I think the big problem is that what's most attractive for people, for some reason, they seem to go to what will lose weight the fastest. And I think why that's a huge issue is because the quicker that someone loses weight without proper education and habit building behind it, the more increased likelihood of them self-sabotaging, falling back into what was easier and familiar before, and with that comes the weight back on with it, as I experienced multiple times before as well. And then what people fail to realize is the fact that there is a host of adaptation mechanisms that occur internally as the body prepares for that pattern to repeat itself again. So we're talking like shifts in fat cell physiology and metabolic memory, especially for females. We're talking like hormone adjustments and thyroid issues and stuff like that as the body prepares for that perceived pattern to repeat itself. So I think the huge issue is that people keep repeating different forms of the same shit, really. And then as that happens, becomes more and more harder to stick to anything because the body's become so accustomed to all this deprivation. So I think that in itself is the biggest problem, because if you look at then what that correlates to, a lot of these programs are built around, well, even if you look at what's trending the most at the moment, it's ketogenic and fasting based. So those are really only sort of built for someone that's already got a proper well-rounded relationship with food and is looking for a tool to harness to maybe chip away a little bit more and then maintain again. But unfortunately, the sort of people that are getting into it are those that already have a pretty shit relationship with food, have all these internal issues going on, so it's only going to magnify those problems like it did for me when I started competing.
Yeah. It's really well put that those things are tools that the right person, could probably benefit from if they needed it. But like you said at the start of that, like it's generally the people that are in the most pain, have tried all the things, that you're the most open to trying anything. You just want the result. You just want, all right, I've tried something, I want it to work. And so you see this claim being made by someone on Instagram or some shit, or maybe even TikTok these days, saying do this, and all of a sudden you'll get in shape. And you go down that road, and as you said, it often just leads to self-sabotage and all things coming back. And it is a frustrating cycle. So yeah, it's very well put. A couple people in the comments, Angus, Shaz has said she's tried all the diets. I have to ask people what diets they tried. All of them. Good on you, Shaz. Really all? There's a lot of them. That's pretty good to do all of them. You've done well. One lady here, Viola, said she's done mainly reduced carbs while following the diet. I think carbs is an interesting one, because you mentioned like ketogenics lots of fat. For those who don't know what a keto diet is, it's really high fat. And some people do high protein, but it's actually meant to be high fat. Some people confuse it and they're not doing high protein. Carbs are a funny one, Angus. I know you've talked a lot about this, so I know your content and stuff. What do you do, Angus, when someone comes to you and says, look, I just know I have to cut out all my carbs to lose weight. I just know that's the only way I've ever lost weight. How do you typically discuss that with someone?
So right off the bat, I call bullshit, but I don't say that to them right away because that's just mean, and it's probably going to flare up their ego in some way. So at the end of the day, like most people these days are fairly active, or at least they're trying to be, and they need decent energy throughout the day. So therefore it's like, you got to then think logically, like if you want that energy and whatever, guess where energy primarily comes from, especially if you're active, it comes from carbohydrates. So if you try to take that out, you're ultimately going to make things unnecessarily hard for yourself. So I think what's going to be the best bet for someone in that sort of thing is to more so just, I guess, assess their tolerance for how much they can handle while being in a safe deficit. But then if they're not even ready to start tracking, there's a lot of things that we can do prior to be able to set the stage for that happening. AKA, for example, a certain amount of protein per day, a certain consumption of plants per day, getting in a certain amount of water and movement and sleep per day, so that way someone's already healthy and the main markers that are useful for a functioning lifestyle. Before then, right, let's start tracking carbs and see how much your body thrives well on, how your performance is checking, what your hunger levels are like, what your cravings are like. Because I find that for someone to be able to have adherence being easy, the less I guess cutting out of things, the better. In other words, we want real estate as much as possible, so that way once adaptation occurs, there's room to go, or there's room to adjust and move forward. Because if you take it all the way to start, sure, you might get some initial results, but then you got to think, well, what are you going to do then? And there's only so much carbs you can cut out, and then you're going to face either having to cut out more protein, cut out more fats, and this is just a slippery slope for where binges are going to start to happen, because you've now got no pleasure in the equation. And if that gets cut out, good luck trying to stick to what you're doing for very long, because humans, we need dopamine, we need that. Unless you've got the discipline of the gods, like I did for some of my preps. But then once the goal's done, it's like, cool, what are you going to do then? And that's where everything increases in novelty. I remember one of the nights, like after my comp, I'd eaten through all my shit box of chocolate and whatever, and I literally smashed a whole pack of those arrowroot biscuits, like the ones that you use as a base and you cover them with icing or whatever. Like I smashed a whole pack of that. That's how tasty it seemed at the time. Whereas a normal person, you eat that, it tastes like fucking nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's I'm laughing because like when I was at my lowest point of eating like things that shouldn't be nice become like amazing. I remember I could real fail like yourself, and I remember once really wanted to binge on muesli. Like, it was muesli sitting in the pantry. And I was just like, God, I just want to eat like that. I was looking at the whole thing. I want to eat all of this. But I managed to resist. It was like fucking muesli. It's not even anything fancy.
Oh.
Yeah, so I guess a quick summary of that is like carbs have a purpose, and when we cut out carbs, we've got to remember they are fuel for exercise, and that's really important. And your point in there about leaving yourself room to move is very important, I think, because if you cut everything out from day one, like you said, you'll get results quick, but your body will respond, like you mentioned before, and then where do you go from there? Yeah. And for most people have a life, of kids at work, you tell them to do 4 hours a day of cardio is not exactly a good strategy that's going to work for very long. You see these people who compete and they go and train for 4 hours a day. It's like, that's their like life goal, is get on stage. It's not always practical for the everyday person. So really, really cool. I think what would be good is like, you've got a certain approach. You mentioned the word before, and it's like a flexible dieting approach now. And like you and I are probably pretty familiar with that phrase. But would you be able to discuss, like, that's obviously what works for you now and has worked for you. How would you describe a flexible dieting approach to someone who's interested in, all right, I want to see results, I want to enjoy it, and I don't want to feel like my life is consumed thinking about food and the next meal, and that I kind of this, kind of that. How do you sort of describe a flexible dieting approach to people understand?
So where this approach stems from is basically a spin-off of something that became mainstream a while back, which is referred to as if it fits your macros. So for someone that isn't aware, that's where basically as long as something fits your macros, you can eat it. And where that gets a lot of novelty from is that someone gets fresh into it and is like, fuck yeah, as long as something hits my macros, I can consume a shit of it provided it fits, right? And this is obviously exciting at the time because you're like, sweet, that means I can eat that muesli, I can eat, whatever it is, and I can just shovel as much as it in provided I hit my macros. But then what you realize pretty quickly is that if you are taking that approach and you're not putting any focus into protein plants and micronutrition and that sort of thing, you start to feel shit very quickly because you realize that, well, vitality is important when it comes to food. So this is where when I'm teaching someone this approach, rather than getting them to be on team if it fits your macros and basically, yeah bro, just eat whatever you want provided you hit your macros, I think that's like a golden ticket kind of scenario, but then it's like you don't know how to use it because you're then quickly realizing, wow, I've got all these numbers I've got to try and hit to a T. I don't know how I'm supposed to go about hitting them. Oh fuck, I blew my carbs and I've undereaten protein and I've only eaten fat. Shit. And then that can magnify someone's already existing, binge eating tendencies. You know what I mean? So entry into flexible land is basically, yes, you can still eat whatever you want. There's nothing off limits. The only time that I get someone to not eat something is if basically they've got an intolerance or an allergy to it. And then what I actually do is I find out what their trigger foods are, right? And I will actually build it into their plan initially. So some people, they might be relevant for like if they've got zero nutrition literacy in terms of like if I was to ask the person, right, what's a good source of protein that's got minimal fat and easily accessible? And they're like, so easy answer is like chicken, for example, or like bass or fish fillets or whatever. Like if their nutrition literacy is shit, they're gonna need a meal plan, see what I mean? And then I build into that flexibility. It's like, cool, here's your pleasure foods built into it. Here's, some plants and whatever. Here's some protein and I'm getting you to eat 4 times a day as opposed to once a day and snacking a shitload and binging at night. Like having some structure but with flexibility weaved in, or if I know they've already got a bit of that literacy built there, it's straight into, right bro, or if it's a chick, yeah, of course, yeah, righto. And I don't even get them to start tracking calories or whatever. I'll just go, I want you to hit a certain protein target and I want you to eat half a kilo of plants a day. And then it's like, cool, they've now started hitting that. Let's now make things a bit more challenging. Now I want you to hit a specific fiber target. Now I want you to hit a specific calorie target. So that way it's like steps forward that are manageable, but still I'm getting them to eat whatever they want. So it's like eating whatever you want, but within certain parameters, and the parameters that are being met are baseline micro and macro nutrition. And then depending on how advanced the goal is, we then get into some supplementation aspects. I don't really believe most people need it, to be honest, but if it's like a comp or like a really specific goal or performance goal, beneficial for sure, but the bulk of this can just be achieved through food and developing some good awareness around it. And then after that, that's where I might bring in, cool, let's have a fats and carbs, you know, specific target. But the bulk of the time, that's not even needed. So as you can see here, it's like a way to level up in structure and have things to aim for, but then some low-key, you know, parameters around that. And then what's really cool is that once this gets nailed, you can use it to have timelines around the goal. So it's like, rather than just like being in a deficit for fucking ever, you know, maybe like an 8 to 12 week block and then a 2-week deficit break before going back into a block again, rinse and repeat, and then maybe throwing in refeeds and stuff like that until they're ready to maintain. Because once you start to learn this stuff, you realize, wow, all I've got to do is just adjust how much I need to eat to be able to meet the demands and the, you know, demands of my life and what I've got coming on. Because then, like, if someone's got travel coming up, hey, you can plan maintenance. If someone's got, you know, some muscle they want to build and they don't want to, you know, stay super skinny or whatever, you can transition. So it's like, it's just a cool way to set them up to be able to know how to reach their goals without the need for me forever.
Yeah. That was a brilliant answer, mate. And
Yahoo! And there we go, fam. How sick was that? Really hope you got some value from episode 2 of the Fuck Dieting 4-part coaching series. Or not coaching series, but yeah, the video series. Speaking of coaching, guess what? I coach people to be able to master this stuff. It's stuff that I've really been evolving in terms of my depth and knowledge around, in terms of freeing people from the dieting suckhole and being able to craft a rock solid relationship with food. And take it from someone who, yeah, like as you heard from even just within this video and in last week's one around my origins backstory, like seriously, the power of getting help and proper help is a game changer to be able to save you shitloads of time, money and resources, you know, from trying to do it solo. So if you know that from all this that that you need some help and that you don't have all the answers, or that you feel like you're putting in all the hustle and the hard yards and feel like you're ticking all the boxes but not really getting anywhere, I'd encourage you to check out some of the links in the description below. And if you're keen to get amongst some anti-diet apparel, I'd encourage also that you check out, someone's trying to call me. I'd encourage that you check out the Fuck Dieting apparel page. That would be awesome for you. Heaps of cool threads that I've personally designed. Check them out. And if you have any questions or anything that I've covered in this video, please feel free to get in touch, or check out any of my social media links below as well. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys in next week's video, which is going to be episode 3 in the series. Take care, and I'll catch you then.